Welcome to The Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a show that is a central hub and safe space for authors to share their stories. The Bold Book with Dr. Denise begins now.
Good morning. Welcome to Bold Book of the Day. Today's episode is with Mr. Bill Potts. I am so excited to have you. This podcast is for anyone looking for inspiration, and he is inspiring. Welcome.
Thank you, Denise. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh my goodness. Please tell our audience about your book. And I have my copy here. Up for the Fight: How to Advocate for Yourself as You Battle Cancer. This is an important book for a 5-time survivor. Oh my goodness. I cannot wait to hear your story. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah. I'll tell you how the book came about because I kind of weaves my story into it. But even hearing the words "5-time survivor" from you is pretty emotional for me because it's at times it's hard to believe the battle that I've been through. But it was September 17th, 2020, that I was in the recovery room at Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida. And I woke up from surgery to remove a tumor below my right hip. And so I woke up in the recovery room. This is during the COVID era, so there's no visitors. It's just me and the nurse. I wake up from this surgery and I'm having an emotional breakdown, which really surprised me, and not like tears running down my face, but full-fledged, sobbing uncontrollably. And the nurse Jen comes over and looks at me and says, "Bill, what's wrong?" And I said, "Jen, I don't think I'm up for the fight." I said, "I know this is the 5th time I've been diagnosed with cancer. I've had this amazing life. I've been fighting it since 2002, that I knew what was coming. And I didn't think I was up for the fight, that maybe it was time just to stop." And she says, "Whoa, okay." She said 2 things. She said, "Bill, I think that in life, God puts an angel in your life when you most need it." She goes, "I think today maybe I'm that angel." And so she called the pastor of Mayo, who came in, and for an hour, we discussed all the reasons why I should continue to fight. And so we weaved in my story of being diagnosed in 2002 with thyroid cancer, going through radiation treatment when my kids were tiny, 6 and 3, a son who's 6 and twin girls that were 3 at the time, and getting through that, just moving on. And then in 2008, being diagnosed with stage 3 lymphoma, and how I dealt with that. And then in 2014, the lymphoma came back, and dealing with that. And in 2019, lymphoma coming back again. And then only in remission 11 months in 2020, it came back again. And each of these battles becomes harder physically. It's cumulative, the treatments, chemo, immunotherapy, the surgeries, and then it also becomes really hard mentally. And I think that's where I was really struggling. Yeah, so the conversation I had with the pastor was really interesting. And so we were really working, in addition to the life story, working on all the reasons why I should continue to fight. And so the conclusion was I should continue to fight for my family. Should continue to fight for my friends. I should continue to fight for my work, which was making a big difference. And then if there was only one reason I could think of, I only could have one, the reason I should fight to make God proud.
Oh.
And so I was good. It took an hour for me to say I wasn't up for the fight, to saying I was up for the fight. So I committed right then that I was up for the fight, and I was going to give it my A+ effort and do everything I could to beat this cancer. And at the end of that conversation, she looks at me and says, "Okay, Bill, you need to turn your pain into purpose and write a book to help others." So my house at the Potts house, a deal's a deal. And so I looked her in the eye and said, okay, I'll do it. Now, remember, this is an hour after waking up from major surgery, and I'm still a little bit unclear in my head. And
yes, but you're committed to writing a book, okay?
Yeah, committed to writing a book, and then I got lucky, and I reached out to Page Two, Jesse Finkelstein at Page Two, who's the CEO, and she said, yeah, I'd like to do this book with you. And so now it's not my book, it's our book, and started writing it while I was going through chemo. And the idea of the book wasn't to be about me. The book is really to help others. It is what to expect when you're expecting, but for cancer. Mm-hmm. So this is the guidebook for patients that are going through the journey. This is the guidebook for family and friends that are going through the journey with the patient. And so this book was really meant to help others really manage the journey better. It's been out a little over a year, and I'm grateful to say that that's working, and I'm getting a lot of good feedback from patients about how it's helped change, their journey. And I've had some people that have reached out and said, hey, because of some of the advice in this book on getting second opinions and things like that, that it's actually saved my life because I wouldn't have got a second opinion. And then there's those that are motivated by my story to fight harder. And because my book, which I didn't expect, gives people hope just from the title, right? Yes. 5-time survivor. It's, I understand that I'm kind of an outlier. And so that's kind of the story. It's the book that kind of I accidentally became an expert in through 20 years of fighting it. And I accidentally committed to writing a book, waking up from surgery. And I have accidentally become one of the preeminent experts in cancer from a patient perspective. And through the book, I deal with cancer patients all day long. And it's been a pivot in my life that I didn't see coming. And when Pastor Tanya said, turn your pain into purpose to help others, it changed my trajectory of my life and allowed me then to focus a lot of my time, not just on writing the book, but getting it out and then promoting the book, but also then talking with patients that are going through the journey, and family and friends too. So it's been a remarkable journey. I mean, it really has been, it's been great. It's been hard, but it's been great.
You talked a lot about some great people just by the short story that you just shared. You talked about speaking with your nurse and how she immediately jumped to fight, to action, to let's save this guy. And I was a bedside nurse, and so I understand. And I was a nurse practitioner during the pandemic.
Oh, wow. So, sure.
And so I remember how the nurses and us as practitioners, we had to be there for the patients, not just to take care of them physically, but also we had to be there mentally to support them mentally. Because family members at that time couldn't come in and give them the support and the love and the affection that they needed, especially during that time. Everything was bigger. Your worry is bigger because everything is so real. You're seeing people dying so fast around you. So everything was bigger. So I remember seeing how the nurses were just different. And I can just imagine that nurse saying, oh no, you're going to survive this. And we're going to do everything we can. You're up for the fight. Not only are you up for the fight, you're going to write a book about it.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, it was a whole different world going through not just the surgery, but chemotherapy. And remember, I've got a cancer of the immune system. So I'm going through all this in the heat of the pandemic when catching COVID. My chance of surviving COVID while I was going through chemo was 45%. So my life was pretty narrow. So that staff at Mayo, in essence, became my family because I couldn't be around many people, right? My wife, who was amazing. But outside of that, I lived a pretty solitary life for a couple of years. And it's just was so neat to see that shift because they had to shift. They, as in essence, had to play the role of family in addition to medical care provider.
Yeah.
And it was hats off to them. There should be a monument erected in Washington, D.C. for those healthcare providers that sacrificed so much and did so much during the pandemic because they've earned it. And I saw it firsthand. So did you.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
They should be lauded and rewarded. And at some point they will. They'll be those that gave their lives, during the pandemic.
Yes. Even though it was an uncertain time, I certainly wanted to be there, be in the hospital to make sure that we are fully staffed. It was like a battlefield for us, and we were in a different mode. We just wanted to make sure that no matter what happened, we're there for each other and we're there for those patients. So I can just imagine her being in fight mode. And I love nurses, and we are exceptional people. So thank her for the role that she played in bringing this book up for the fight to the forefront, to giving you that idea so that you can see that people need tips and tools that they can use during hard times, perilous times. So I know this book, it was written with people, going through the journey in mind. Can you share some of the tips and tools that are in the book? Not everything, just a few.
Yeah, if you had to ask me to summarize some of the key points of the book that you wouldn't want anybody to miss, and I'll segment this by patient and I'll segment it by family and friends. But if there's only one thing you take away from the book, it's to make sure that you own your journey and that you take charge of it right from the beginning. And so you get that cancer diagnosis or any major healthcare diagnosis, it's hard to think. The stress is overwhelming. It's hard to sleep. It's hard to eat. It's hard to make good decisions, but you have to own your care. That it's not the healthcare team that owns you. You own you. And what I found is that the being prepared when you go in, taking notes when you go into your appointments, challenging, understanding, doing your homework, really reaps a lot of rewards. And to the point that the first part of owning your journey is to pick your healthcare team. And for cancer, that means a high volume cancer center, period.
Yes.
There's like 61 NCI accredited by the National Institute of Health cancer centers in the U.S. You got to go to those guys because they're used to handling the high volume.
Yes. They have the most experience. They're, the specialists. Yeah.
Yes. So you get your first opinion from your local folks, and then you get your second opinion from the high volume cancer centers, and then you make a decision where you want to go. And you can do both. You can get second opinions from the high volume cancer center and then get treated, locally. There's all sorts of different ways to do it. But what you have to do is you have to make sure the treatment, the diagnosis and the treatment are right. And so it's not always the case that the initial diagnosis for cancer is right. In many cases is not, or the staging is right. In many cases is not. So that's why that second opinion becomes pretty important. And as an example for that, I was in MD Anderson in Houston, 2008, stage 3 lymphoma. And I go through a week of staging. I live in Tampa, St. Petersburg. And so I'm traveling down there, and they say, okay, here's what you're going to do. Here's what your treatment's going to be. And I look at them and I'm like, no. Like, what do you mean no? I'm like, I've done my homework. I know what that treatment is, and I know that I'm going to lose my hair. They're like, so? And I'm like, I'm in sales. I travel for a living. I've got a family to take care of. I don't want to miss work, and I don't want people to know I have cancer. And if I lose my hair, when I go on a sales call, if I can go, because I'll be pretty beat up, is they're going to say they want to talk about me. Well, if you're in sales, you want the customer talking about themselves. You don't want
That's
to be
right.
the center.
It's not about you.
Yeah, and so they're like, because they're MD Anderson, #1 cancer center in the world. They're like, okay,
Oh wow.
all right. They're like, okay, all right, give us some time. And that time stretched into 1 hour. Then it was 2 hours, and I'm about to miss my flight back. And I'm like, that's fine. If I miss it, I miss it. And they came back and they're like, okay, we met as a team. There's like 8 of them or so at least that met as a team. Like, we think we're gonna recommend to put you in a clinical trial. This is 2008.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, what is it? And they're like, well, you probably haven't heard this before, but we're working on a thing that we call immunotherapy. I'm like, immunotherapy. It really didn't even become public till 2009. And I'm like, okay, what will I get to keep my hair? Yes. Do you know if it's going to work?
Let's just prioritize. Okay.
Yeah. Do you know if it's going to work? No. I'm like, well, we hopeful, but we're not sure. It's a clinical trial. I'm like, well, what if it doesn't work? Then they're like, then you'll lose your hair. We'll go back and do the original treatment. And so all I'm losing is time. Yeah, you're going to lose, 12 to 16 weeks going through this clinical trial. Then we'll retest. And if it didn't work, then you'll lose your hair. And I'm like, okay, deal, done. And so I flew home as one of the early benefactors of immunotherapy, and it knocked me into remission for 5.5 years. Everybody was surprised. And so that's a situation where owning my journey made a lot of sense. And I look back to 2002 where I didn't, and I had thyroid cancer, went through radiation treatment, had my whole thyroid taken out at a local for-profit place in Texas. And I was living in Texas at the time. And a year later, that same group, and I got lit up with radiation, so much so that I had to use a Geiger counter before I could leave the hospital when I was getting that radiation treatment. This is a pill, the same pill that is iodine-131, which is the same stuff that was released from Chernobyl. And so I'm getting that to take care of my thyroid cancer. A year later, they come back and go, the same group says, Bill, your cancer's back from the scan. I'm like, there's no way. It can't be back. I don't have a thyroid. I just had enough radiation to create some big issues. And so then I went to MD Anderson to get a second opinion. And they're like, Bill, your cancer's for sure not back. So therefore, you don't need another round of radiation. And by the way, you got a lot of radiation when you went through it the first time, and that's a little concerning to us. And likely that's the reason why I have, this incurable form of lymphoma now, is because I just got lit up. So if I hadn't owned my journey back then, which is now 2003, I would have got lit up with another round of radiation. I'm telling you, we would not be having this conversation. That book would not be written, and I would not be a 5-time cancer survivor. I would have been gone way ahead of where we are now. So that lesson taught me the importance of owning the journey, which is, in essence, for me, it saved my life. And a mistake of not getting a second opinion at the beginning may cost me my life, because they still haven't figured out how to cure my cancer. So I want to share.
So that wasn't a special. The first time was not with a special cancer center.
No, first time local for-profit that my primary care physician recommended. So low volume. I have to be careful that I say this, but it wasn't 100% about me. And when I go to MD Anderson, or I go to Mayo, or if you go to Sloan Kettering, or you go to Dana-Farber, or if you go to the Hutchinson Cancer Center, pick it, they're all over the country. You are the priority.
Yes.
It's not about anything but you. It's not about money. It's about you. And I'm grateful that I got that second opinion, and I've continued to own my journey the whole time. So that's the key lesson to learn from the book, from a patient perspective, in addition to all the tips about what types of tests you're going to get, to what are the side effects of the treatments, all the questions to ask. It goes through all that, right?
Yeah.
So that piece is good. From a family perspective, because this is a big question, it's like, how do you treat the patient? What do you do? What do you say? And that's all in the book as well. But I like to talk about things not to say, because we all make this mistake, because we intend to say the right things to cancer patients, but many times you don't. For example, I had this question, Denise, I'm not making this up. I had the question, what are your odds? I'm like, what are your odds? And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You're asking me, what are my odds? And so I said, my odds are 100%. And they're like, I'm like, I'm living or I'm dying 100%. I'm not living or dying 50%. It's either one way or the other. So my odds are 100%. And
100%.
of course, in the book too, for family and friends, don't look at the odds, because the odds don't count. If I'm 1 in a million, if the written odds are 1 in a million, I'm going to beat that cancer, and I beat that cancer, then I'm 100% survive. I'm 100% lived, right? So it doesn't matter if there's 1 in a million chance, it might be you. So don't worry about the odds. And so, but also, people would come over to the house to see me, and they would start crying when I answer the door. I'm like, why are you crying? I'm the one that has cancer. I'm like, that's not helping me out at all. Or they'd say, Bill, you're going to beat it because of your good attitude. And I'm like, that is so not true. Attitude helps. It does help, but it can't save you.
It does, but it can't
does
save
help.
you.
It can't save me. So like, don't tell me I'm going to beat it, because you don't know. You don't know. So it makes you feel better, but it doesn't make me feel better. Don't tell me about all the people that you know have had cancer. Don't make it about you again. Don't tell me about your uncle, your grandmother. I don't know. Keep the focus on the patient. And for sure, drives me crazy. For sure, don't tell me about, oh, I know this guy that went to Mexico and took this, and I know if you drink that juice, or I know if you read this book about diet, you don't need to go through.
Everyone's an expert, okay?
So, and
Everyone's an expert.
Nobody's more an expert than the patient, because you have to be the expert on your own stuff. But what I learned too is things. What I put in the book are things what to do. If you know somebody that has cancer, or has been diagnosed,
Before
what to
we get
do.
to what to do, I wanted to ask you about managing emotions, because it's at that time you're so vulnerable, and so much is going on, and so many people are giving you advice, and so many people are requiring you to be at a certain place at a certain time to just for your health. Most of the time, just for your health. And so, how do you manage this push and the pull and your emotions dealing with cancer for 5 times?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and the answer is it is infinitely challenging, and so it is a roller coaster of emotions, and but the big picture for me is to prioritize the reasons why I'm fighting every day. So every day I don't have any issue waking up, and still every day I take a pill to replace my missing thyroid. And every day I have to be careful because my immune system still kind of is not perfect. But I remind myself every day why I'm fighting. And then with that, set my priorities as to how I'm going to go through my life and go through this journey. So what it takes is really tuning out a lot of that noise. And not being around people that are gonna take away energy from you, but be around people that are gonna give you energy. And so all of a sudden, you have to prioritize that on top of anything else. But what's really helped me in the emotions is to treat it like a job. So I'm like, now today is my job to right now, like for today, March 1st, when we're recording this, my job is to make sure that I am in shape for when my cancer comes back. And so that in shape is physically. So my diet is clean. I exercise. So right now, I just came off some prostate surgery, so I'm not quite exercising yet, but exercise, connecting with the environment, grounding, deep breathing, reading, time alone, prayer, all those kind of things to make sure that I am ready for when it comes back. And I've done that this whole time. So
Yeah.
whenever the cancer comes back, as an example, 2014, I'm at MD Anderson going through an infusion, and the alarm goes off. The nurses come running in. They turn off the machine. I flash red on the board outside, so they know there's something wrong with me. And my heart rate was really low, 42. And so the alarm turned off the infusion because they're like, what is happening to this guy?
Mm-hmm.
And so they called my doctor. They paged him, and he goes, oh, don't worry about him. He's an Ironman athlete. His heart rate's always low because he's in great physical shape. And so the physical conditioning that I try to put into my life is so I can be ready when it comes back. And so far that's working. And I mean, I literally went through surgery 30 days ago for prostate. I do have prostate cancer, but we don't count that as that's not in the 5. But my recovery has been remarkable. And Mayo's like, wow. I'm like, I know. I was ready for it.
Yeah, you wrote a book about it.
Yeah, so
Wow.
so that treating it like a business,
Yeah,
is pretty important. And I think also when we talk about prioritizing, it's probably the best decisions that I make are the things that I decide not to do. So volunteering on a committee that with a bunch of people that I'm going to add minimal value, probably not. Spending time on a podcast like this where I can influence more people, probably yes. Going to the big fundraising gala for the Arthritis Foundation, probably not. Going to helping raise money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, probably yes. So I still won't do a gala, too many people with my immune system, but
right.
it's made a big difference. And it's also, this journey has changed my perception on life, and I think has helped me to live it with a different set of blinders on. I think the example that it feels like to me is, have you ever seen those videos with somebody that's colorblind?
Mm-hmm.
And so then
they see,
then they put on the glasses, and all of a sudden they see everything in a whole new way. That's what happened to me. And I go outside, I see and hear everything. The birds, the trees, the wind, the leaves, the flowers, the people, the kids playing in the playground. I hear everything, and I see so much more than I did before when I was so focused on me. And now I see the world in such a beautiful way that I don't think I would have seen before if I hadn't been through this journey and had some near death experiences. And I think that's a lesson for everybody, is just live in the moment and just see and enjoy. And I was so wrapped up in life, and I wasn't seeing everything. So, and that's a blessing. But I wish I had do I wish I wouldn't have had cancer? Yeah, that would have been great.
right.
But I do, and I did, and at least it's changed how I see the world and how I live my life. And I think that's pretty cool.
You were able to see the lessons that can make your life so much more abundance, because you're telling me that now you pay attention to things that we just go about our day, don't realize that there are birds chirping and the tree is green or lively dependent on the time of year. Pay attention to your surroundings, because this is live in the moment. This is the present that we have. The present is the beautiful present that we have. So pay attention. Thank you so much for thinking about others, for writing this beautiful book, but most of all, for being up for the fight. Because as you shared, it wasn't easy. And I know your book emphasizes the importance of building the care team, but my goodness, I think that's just such an important part of the journey. And you shared some of the roles that, the caregiver should take, or some of the role of the care team. But what are some things that we have no idea. Well, it's in the book, but we have no idea to ask for, who are part of the care team.
Yeah, it's by the way, beating cancer is a team effort, and you have to build a team. And you are, as the patient, you're the quarterback and the head coach. So you're picking the players on the team, and you're also calling the plays. And so you've got to really
A lot of
be
jobs.
a pretty good leader. It's a big job to be the head coach and the quarterback, but obviously you got to pick your healthcare team. But it's not just your oncologist. It's also the primary care physician that you've got to coordinate with, so they know what's going on. Your local person, if you're going out of town like I do for my treatments. It's also the dermatologist that's local, because I'm going to have some sort of reaction, and I do, to the infusions, and my skin's a mess, and I got to go there to get treated in between my infusions. It's also the mental health aspect of it.
Yes.
If you need somebody to talk to, or the groups that you need to be involved with to kind of get through the mental and emotional health of it. You need that team. On my team, I had a nutritionist, I had a dietitian, specifically. Okay, let's help me eat the best I can while I'm going through treatment. Now help me best I can now that I'm done treatment, so I can rebuild my immune system. All those people are members of the team on the medical side, and then you need the family side. And so you've got to be able to coach your family. And for me, my wife's been my primary buddy. Not everybody, but she couldn't be with me all the time because she was raising, 3 kids and working while I'm going through all this as well. And so you've got to have support that can sit with you on appointments. You've got to have somebody to sit with you during the treatments. You need to have somebody to drive you to and from the treatments. You need to have somebody that is up to date on what's going on. So if you had a side effect, they know that it's a side effect. They know who to call. They know whether it's a 911 or not. And so that team is pretty important. And the family, the kids, my kids, they all have a role, which is basically to keep in touch with their dad and make them feel good, and call them and text them and make sure they remind him that he's loved. And I think my son did it really well. One time, he lives in Boston. He flew home, and I was kind of going through it. And so we're sitting talking, and it's like a Saturday night. And I'm like, "Don't you have tons of friends that live here you want to go hang out with?" He goes, "Yeah, I do have tons of friends I could hang out with, but no." He says, "I just want to sit here with you." And I'm like, "Thank you." So the best thing you can do as a family or friend in many cases is just to be with them. And I think the biggest lesson that I learned from all this related to family and friends is to make sure that you tell them that you love them. And so I didn't want to be that guy that died and didn't tell them how I felt. So now I tell them. And it's been really magical, especially from a guy perspective, because guys a lot of times don't say, "Hey, I love you."
Right.
And so I do, and it's been remarkable. And kind of with the cancer journey, some friends will disappear, and that's probably common with 100% of cancer patients because they don't know how to deal with it, and I give them grace for that. So, and then people that maybe you weren't as close to lean into you, and your circle becomes smaller of friends, but it becomes a tighter group, and that group that leans into you really can make such a huge difference in the patient's life. I've had people that have flown into town just to have lunch with me outside because I couldn't do inside, and I didn't know it. I'd say, "Hey, what are you doing in town? You in here for business?" "Oh no, I just flew in to see you." This one guy says, "Hey, do you have time for dinner?" I'm like, "Sure." He lived in Cincinnati, and I said, "Sure." He says, "Okay." He says, "I'll be there at 7. Comes over at 7. We have dinner on my patio outside, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He says, "Oh, I'm in Florida for business." I'm like, "Okay. Well, where are you staying?" He goes, "Oh no, I'm driving back to Daytona Beach after dinner." I'm like, "Dude, that's like 2.5 hours." He goes, "Oh, I know." I'm like, "Well, thank you for coming over." So you find these friends that all of a sudden exceed expectations, and it's pretty cool.
Remarkable. being there for your family members is really important. You talked about, in your book, you talk about just what if? What if the person doesn't make it? You talked about making peace with death. Can you provide just a little bit of insight about how we can navigate the sensitive but profound aspect of the journey of cancer?
Yeah, it's a tough one. So I'll give you an answer from really two perspectives. Number one is from the patient perspective, and it took me a number of years and a number of battles to really get my hand around the dying part. In 2008, I had a severe reaction to chemotherapy, and it was a pretty challenging moment. And it really wasn't until then that I started really thinking about the dying part. And this journey has strengthened my faith for sure. It doesn't make me want to fight any less, but it makes me not afraid of death. So from the patient perspective, I needed to get my hands around that possibility and my head and my heart around that possibility, because it was a real possibility. And we talked about 45% chance surviving COVID. Each time I went to chemotherapy in 2020 and 2021, I had a 3% chance of dying that day, just from the treatment. And so I learned not to be afraid. And once I wasn't afraid, it helped me change how I lived and also change my approach. I also made sure that, as that was a possibility of dying, that I had things buttoned up from a legal perspective, which I did. Hire the lawyers, the wills, all those kind of things you have
Absolutely.
to do.
Yes.
I have a journal that I update still. I updated it just a few weeks ago when I was getting ready to go through surgery again. Is the stuff that I call it the what if book. Is the binder. Is okay now, family. What if I die? Here's where you need to go. Grab this book, and it's going to take you through all my passwords. It's going to take you through how to access my computer. It's going to tell you what to do with my stuff. It's going to tell you through what kind of funeral I want, which I really don't care.
Oh my God, is that in this book?
And that's not that. Yeah, the what if. And so I go through that. I have all that, letters to the kids. So I know if I'm laying there about to go, or I get surprised and die through one of these treatments, that I don't have to worry about that stuff. I got that stuff covered. I'm trying to minimize the burden for my family. It's going to be clear cut. I've already told the kids, take care of your mom. Here's the two people to call. They'll handle it for her. Make sure you take care of her. And so that's also pretty good. And then they take care of it. It helps take care of the family, and that's a big part. But also with the family, and this is a hard one, is you got to address with them the dying part. Now, when they were little, when they were 3 and 6 and middle school, probably not so much. But when they get to high school, I'm like, guys, let's talk about. Now I'm number 3, I'm number 4, I'm number 5 on the beating cancer, and each time gets progressively harder to win that battle. Let's talk about it. And so we do, and it's not a lot, but they're like, guys, you need to be aware, and you need to make sure you have the support you need if that happens. And we don't talk about it much. I'm sure we think about it more than we talk about it, but you got to address the fact. What I didn't want them to do was to be surprised. Like,
oh yes,
wow,
yes.
I didn't see that coming. Guys, you need to be aware. We hope it doesn't happen, but don't get caught flat-footed if it does. Make sure you've got the support you need, that you've given it some thought, so that you can handle it better.
Did you wrestle with that for yourself? How did you come to terms with, yes, I'm giving it my all because I am up to the fight, but I've been through it so many times. Now, did you wrestle with, now making it?
Yeah, another great question. I think I was in denial myself, like a lot of people were. Everybody just assumed I was going to beat it. You look at me, I don't look like you're typical cancer patient. My attitude's always pretty good. I'm pretty positive. Up until this book, I never talked about it really with too many people. I kept it a secret largely from people because I just didn't want that to be how I was defined in my life. But yeah, I mean, when you're kind of knocking on the door, any day that door could open for you, it kind of forces you. I think I'm a slow learner, but I finally caught up to it at about number 3 or 4 with cancer to really address it in my heart.
Yes. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing such intimate story, powerful story, impactful. And it made me think. I had a sister just pass a couple of years ago, and you said how your friend took the time to come and to be with you, and how that made such a big difference, because you're realizing that this person cares. He's going through the motions to show that he want to be with you. He want to spend time with you. And it's inconvenience for him, but boy, you're going through a tough time. So he's going to do all he can. And one of the proudest things that I've ever done was be there for my sister before she passed. And I'm a practitioner at nights, and I made sure my husband and I, in the mornings, drive 2 hours. It's about an hour and a half up to Connecticut, spend some time with her, go with her to her chemotherapy, and then drive back home and go to work that night.
Yeah.
But when I heard your story, I got a little emotional because I was just seeing you on the porch with your friend and enjoying your time, and just hearing how much it means to you. It just made me, a little bit emotional. So sorry about that, but thank you. You're amazing, Bill.
You are
And
too.
you've done us, thank you. You've done us a wonderful favor by writing this book and giving us, because whether you have cancer or not, this is a book of stories that can inspire you to be there for someone else. It doesn't have to be someone that's sick. Just be there for your family and loved ones. There's so many great tips, and I'm sure that I'm going to learn so much more when I'm through with this book. But I want you guys to go out there and get this book. Up for the Fight. Where can they get this book?
I think it anywhere. Amazon is the big one, but Barnes and Noble, Target.com, wherever books
What
are
about your
sold.
website?
Yeah. Well, I send them to Amazon on my website. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't
Let them do the work.
Yeah. Keep the publisher happy too. But yeah, so anywhere you want to buy books, and I think too, it's a good book for where I'm finding it to be pretty powerful is if you know someone that's going through the journey, you gift them the book, or if you know someone whose family or friends are going through the journey, you gift them the book, and it's with 100% certainty it'll resonate with them, and it will make a difference in the journey. And that special purpose is what gets me up every morning to sit on podcasts and share the journey, because it is, as you can see, it's hard to talk about sometimes.
You've done a wonderful job, and I know that it's not easy, but you have eloquently expressed and given us so many advice. I can't. I want you to come back also, because you have another book in you, the one with the how to get through with the passwords. What's the name of that book?
Oh yeah,
that you haven't written yet.
That'll be called the Just in Case book.
The Just in Case book.
Yeah, so
I want you to come back after you've written the Just in Case book. Okay?
Yeah, it's a good book, and I'm telling you, I hope that they never have to. That's the book I hope that they never have to read.
Right, I know. But just in case, you got
it. Just in case, there it is. It's red. They all know where it is. Go to the Just in Case. It is labeled Just in Case.
Bill, you are wonderful. Thank you for sharing your story. Before you go, there are 3 questions that I love to ask all of my guests. Number 1, what bold promise can you share with the audience today?
Yeah, we talked about it before, but if you face mortality, you face death, it teaches you how to live. That's bold. And I only know that because
Yes.
I've gone through it the hard way and good way. So
Talk about it.
yeah, I mean, it's when you don't take each day for granted, when you take each day as a blessing, because
Mm-hmm.
you thought and you realize that it could be your last, then all of a sudden living becomes a lot more fun. You don't stress the small stuff. People just
Mm-hmm.
crack up how I handle stress now differently than I did before. But I mean, a driver goes by, honks the horn, gives you the finger, and I'm like, yeah, whatever.
He has
I,
no idea.
I was riding my bike,
He has no
and
idea.
somebody heaved a Mountain Dew into my back, and it hit me in the back and splattered everywhere. My wife, she was behind me, and she looks at me, and I'm like, yeah, nah, I'm not gonna get mad. I said, I don't know what's wrong with them that they would
Mm-mm.
throw stuff at a cyclist that's moving, but whatever. It is funny. So my life is a lot less stressed because I've looked at not taking each day for granted.
Good advice. Thank you so much. What's a bold statement can you share with the audience that will cause a paradigm shift?
Yeah, it's counterintuitive, and we've talked about it already. But if you own your journey and don't let others
Mm-hmm.
own your journey, particularly in the healthcare side, it will change and could save your life. A lot of people think that when you go to the doctor and the doctor says, "Okay," that the doctor's in charge. Well, by the way, even the best doctor doesn't get much time with you, so it's not like they know you. They do kind of know who you are, but they don't know you deep because they don't have the time to be able to get to know you. So you got to own it, and this really goes for life on its own. Yeah,
Yeah.
look, the cards dealt with the cancer, incurable cancer. Okay, it stinks, but whatever. I own the journey, and it's mine. It's nobody else's. I make the decisions. I make the right ones. I make the wrong ones. At the end of the day, it's on me anyway. And it's that way with any
Yeah.
healthcare journey that it's not your doctor's job to make sure you're at the right place. It's not your doctor's job to make sure that you're getting the right tests. It's not. It is and it isn't. It's not the doctor's job to make sure that you see the person with the most specialized care in that particular type of issue that you have. For example, my
Yeah.
doctor at
You're
MD
right.
Anderson, there's 61 different types of lymphoma. My doctor at MD Anderson saw more cancer with my particular version of lymphoma than anybody in the world. I'm like, booyah. Okay, that's what you want. But you got to work to find it.
Yes.
And to own your healthcare journey
Yeah.
takes tremendous amounts of work. It's like another full-time job. So if you had a full-time job like I did, plus 3 kids, plus travel with work, finding the time to own your journey means you got to give a lot of other stuff up, like TV, like a lot of other things. And so, but what's more important than owning your journey? And in the case for me, saving my life by owning it and just
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. Just do it. Own your journey. Just do it. What's a bold move you'd like to make in the future, Bill?
I struggle with the whole concept of talking about my journey because I don't love it, and I don't love to be the center of attention related to my cancer journey. But the bold piece for me is even though I've tried to stop a couple times promoting the book because I don't because it's hard to talk about and it's kind of triggering, is that I got to overcome that and continue to push the message of owning your journey and getting second opinions. And I need to lean in on the cancer side and spend my time. My bold vision is to not diminish my efforts on the cancer side, but to enhance them. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
Thank you so much for being so bold in sharing your story, even though you were drunk when you decided.
Oh my
Not drunk.
gosh.
You
I
were
was
all
it was it was fentanyl. I was coming off of a little dose of fentanyl
coming
for the
off of
pain.
something.
And oh my gosh.
You were
It's
in another world, but
I was, but I remembered, and a deal's a deal. And so
a
thanks to
deal is a
Pastor
deal in
Tanya.
the pod's home.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Up for the fight. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for coming here and being such an inspiration. You are amazing. You are
Thank you.
amazing.
So are
You're
you.
amazing. Thank you. I can't wait for you to come back and teach us how to write a just in case book.
I love it. It's a great idea. Thank you.
These nurses, every time you get around them, you're writing a book.
That's right. I didn't commit though. I said I'll
You
think
didn't
about
it. Well, this one you'll do, and all the, I mean, we'll talk about that secondly. Writing your book and owning your royalties, doing a self-published book so that this way you get 100% of your royalties. We'll do that for the next book. All right.
Oh yeah, that's not the direction I went on this one, but
Yeah.
that's a good idea.
Yes. Thank you. So for you out there that are listening, I know you've learned so much today and found Bill's story so inspiring, so moving, so emotional. And I have too. If you'd like to get his book, yes, you should get his book. Please. It's on all of the major sites: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, you name it, Target, Walgreens. It's there. Just Google it, okay? And get you a copy. If you know someone that's going through cancer, this is the perfect book because it teaches them how to advocate for themselves. And it gives them and the family members some tips and tools that they can use during this hard time. Trust me, you are going to need all the help you need. God forbid you find out you have this. So get this book, gift it to someone, and thank you so much, Bill, for coming. If you would like to write your very own book, join the Writing Incubator Challenge. Send me an email at authordnicholson@gmail.com. I can help you get your book idea out of your head and onto paper where you can finally become the published author that you've been dreaming of and make some money. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a central hub and a safe space for authors to share their stories. Follow Dr. Denise on Facebook and Instagram at Denise Nicholson or go to denisenicholson.com. Remember, no one can share your story better than you.